Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast, where we explore personal development, spirituality, and science. I'm your host, Chris Ashley. I am insanely excited for today's interview. I am so lucky. I have one of my favorite authors of the past couple decades on with me today. So it's going to be an awesome conversation. First, couple quick announcements. If you head to the links in the show notes, you will find not only my amazing guests links, but you will find a bunch of my links as well. You'll find a link to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. You'll find links to my courses, free downloads, my free live masterclass. And as always, this podcast is part of the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network. So we are doing a lot with personal development. We have some amazing live events coming up, some amazing virtual events coming up. So be sure to follow along and come with us on this journey. Hi, I'm Chris. When I was younger, I went through trauma that caused me to feel broken and lost. But my life changed after I had a spiritual awakening. Since then, I've dedicated my life to studying and learning from masters all around the world that have helped me to create a life of fulfillment and abundance beyond my wildest dreams. Now I'm dedicated to sharing everything I've learned so that you don't have to suffer for decades like I did. I've seen people's lives completely transformed, and I share it all right here. All right, so let's get right back to it. With me today, I have Bob Frissell. So Bob is the founder of the Breath Alchemy Technique and has been a teacher of breathwork for more than 35 years. He's a senior student of Jim Leonard in breathwork and Drunvalo Melchizedek in the Flower of Life. He is the author of several books, including the bestseller 25th Anniversary Edition of Nothing in This Book is True, but It's Exactly How Things Are. And then again, on a personal note, I first came across Bob's books in the early 2000s because the book that led to my spiritual awakening, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, Bob was a student of as well and went on to teach those workshops and talks about some of the same materials. So you've heard me talk about Drunvalo. You are going to love Bob. So welcome, Bob. I'm so happy you're here.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's great to be here. So, yeah, let's get going. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, and I love that you have the bridge in the background because we just live right across the bridge from each other, basically, or one of those bridges, right? So you're up in Sonoma, I'm in the East Bay. I love it.
Yep.
Okay, so I always start all of my episodes the same way, and it wouldn't be true to form if I didn't start this one the same way as well. So I like to ask my guests what their origin story is. So, how did you come to be this teacher of breath alchemy and the flower of life? And how did you even get interested in all of this?
Out of pure necessity.
Nice.
No other way to say it. When I go back in the day, I was well, I had created a back injury that left me pretty much helpless, in enormous constant pain, and not able to do really much of anything. And I'm young in the prime of life and all of that, and now I'm living in a body that ain't worth living in. And I figured, well, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. And so I did some deep soul searching, and I came to the personal understanding that, well, I can go to doctors. But I quickly said, no, I'm not going to let a doctor look at my back, because I had heard too many horror stories of
Mhm.
people who had gotten back surgery and spent the rest of their lives wishing they hadn't done that. So I was not going to go there. Chiropractors saved my life. They really did. God bless them. But the law of diminishing returns began to set in. In other words, I could get patched up by a chiropractor, and 5 minutes later, there I was, twisted up like a pretzel again.
Mhm.
So that really wasn't a solution either. That left me with only one alternative, and that was to find a way to heal myself. So there's a necessity element right there. And if you look at where I was, my level of consciousness at the time is that I was asleep, I was unconscious, I was at the very bottom of the total totem pole of self-awareness. I didn't know any of what I know right now, so I was starting from really from about as low as you can go. And but what I had going for me. I had the most essential ingredient at all, and that is the unquavering, what am I saying here? The absolute desire to find a way to heal myself. Call that a burning desire, call that 100% intention. Uh, at the time, I thought everybody had that, but I quickly came to realize that very few people know what a burning desire, what 100% intention really is.
Mm.
The 100% intention is you're willing to do whatever it takes, and you're not going to be stopped by the stops that normally, just stop you right in your tracks. So that's how it all began for me.
And I'm assuming listeners are probably wondering, did you finally heal your back through
100%.
everything you found?
100%. Took a long time because I was starting from square one. But I'll tell you what, Chris, it led me on an incredible adventure. Uh, and it's an adventure that continues to the day. It just keeps going. And the whole thing is fueled by that unrelenting 100% desire to just keep going, to keep improving myself, to keep finding a way. Yeah, I did heal my back 100%. It took a number of years. Goodness sakes, it took from 1976 to 1991. Uh,
Wow.
that's a long time to be stuck like a pretzel and to not be in constant pain. But I didn't give up. I just kept going. And it was finally when I discovered that really the body is not solid at all. It's just pure energy. And to learn how to move that energy again, it was really the key to my healing. And I got, as I said, in 1991, my first major healing. It wasn't 100% healing, but it was a major breakthrough. And from there, I knew it was just inevitable that I would, in fact, entirely heal myself. And when I say heal myself completely, I mean it's just like it never ever happened. It was dominating and controlling my life totally until it was healed. But now it's like it never ever happened. And I'm really pleased to be able to report that.
That's amazing. So you were saying that it's because you realize that we are all energy. So is it that people have to have this belief system that we are not our bodies, we are these spiritual beings made of energy? Or were there certain modalities that you teach that people can use to really heal themselves? Because there's a lot of people out there suffering injuries and illnesses.
There sure are. Yeah, I was one of many. Yeah, well, the process, and it literally was a process of discovering that I'm much more than just a body, just a human being having a human spiritual experience occasionally. You turn that around, and we are spiritual beings having a human experience. But again, it took me many years to begin to come to that realization. What happened in the interim was that I discovered through really through an early form of breath work in a guided session that I had, I believe it was in May of about 1980, where for the first time, oh, goodness sakes, in 4 or 5 years, I had developed so much body armor around that injury that I couldn't feel a thing. I was as stiff as a board around it. There was no life energy. It felt almost like I could feel my upper body and my lower body, but not the area of my low back. That much body armor.
Mm.
Well, in that breathwork session, I experienced really just for a brief and shining moment that the energy broke through the barriers and I was able to feel. And I was not only able to feel, but I was also able to feel the energy moving. And
Wow.
I just realized at that point, well, that's the key to my healing right there. Now, I say it was just for a brief and shining moment because I was still in the early stages of learning. And it took me 7, 8 more years to begin to progress enough to get to what you might call stage two of the healing process to learn how to create for myself that constant flow of energy in my body. And that's when the healing really began to take place.
That's really amazing. So, what is it that you think created that stuck energy, or what is it that creates stuck energy in anyone?
There's no doubt about it. Unresolved emotional trauma, and physical abuse, and all the rest of that stuff stemming from early childhood. I didn't have any awareness of that at the time. You kidding? And in fact, if you would have come up to me and told me that, hey, your back injury is a result of all this unresolved emotional trauma that you suffered as a child, I, you know, I'm not a fighter, but I might have said, hey, you want to fight? Hey, come on, don't run that number on me. I couldn't have heard it. So it took a long time to come to that realization. Uh, but let's put it this way, Chris. You could have told me, but you got to do more than just tell a person. You've got to show them. It has to become your living experience. That's how I discovered it. And how I discovered it as my living experience was just by feeling it through progressing enough in breath work that I was able to ultimately transmute all of the energy, all of that stuck energy that was creating, like I said earlier, just enormous barriers, enormous blockages in my body, to transmute that life detracting stuck energy into life enhancing, healthy energy that was now able to move again. And there you go, bingo. There's the key to your healing right there. So, not just me, but for anybody who's living in a body that is filled with you know, pain and stuff that you really would rather not have going on in your body. Yeah, that's just you and me and a few other people, I suppose.
Yeah, just a couple of us.
Yeah, just right.
So, how does breath work help move energy?
Yeah, well, let's I think in order to cover that, Chris, we need to just go back and lay a little bit of groundwork here.
Sure.
Uh, and I'd like to begin by talking about what I consider to be very powerful and very useful universal principles, universal laws. Now, the thing about universal principles, or universal laws, you might call them, is that just like man made laws, ignorance of the law is no excuse. I mean, you can be driving 50 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone. And if you get pulled over and you say, well, gosh, officer, I didn't know, good luck, right? That's not going to take you very far. So ignorance of the law just does not work. Well, the same is true for universal principles. And so these are principles that if we do not know, they're going to operate ir- whether we know it or not. They're just going to continue to produce their effects in our lives in less than optimal ways. So it's very useful to become aware of them enough to begin to align with them consciously so that you can begin to get the more positive benefit from them. So, with that said, the first universal principle is what I like to call the perfection principle. And what it says is that you and I are perfect, yet we have barriers to the experience and perfection and experience of that perfection.
Mm.
Well, the barriers are oh goodness sakes, I just said so much there. I can almost only throw it out right now. You and I are perfect. And if you're hearing this for the first time, you're going to go, what? What? That we're perfect? No, we're not perfect. Well, the truth is we are. And I go into great detail in my books, showing the mind, the unity of life, and showing the nature of the holographic universe, and just making it very clear that you and I are perfectly functioning holograms of the one creator. And a hologram is such that every part of you can take a hologram and cut it into four equal pieces, or as many as you want, 1,000 if you want. And each one of those pieces is going to, when you shine a laser through it, is going to give you a smaller version of the whole. Well, that's what we are, because everyone and everything in this waveform universe is holographic. Everyone and everything without exception is a smaller version of the whole. And so that's kind of an introduction to what I mean when I say that you and I are perfect, yet we have barriers to our experience and expression of that perfection. Well, the principle, what I call the resistance principle, says that with regard to any of these barriers, if you resist them, what it's going to do is going to give you more of what you don't like and more of what you don't want. In other words, resistance leads to persistence. And that includes ignoring it. Ignoring it is just a form of resistance, pretending it's not there, etc. Uh, Plastering it over by medicating it with who knows what, a variety of substances. No, that's only going to cause persistence. It's the third notion that says what I like to call the harmonizing principle that we need to become aware of and really need to make friends with. And what the harmonizing principle says is that the recreation of experience causes the experience to disappear. Well, okay, what does that mean? What it means is that here again, because you and I are energetic components, everything in waveform universe is energy. Energy in its natural aliveness state wants to move. It's vibrant. And the higher the vibratory rate, the more healthy it is. The denser the vibratory rate, the less healthy it is. And if you had energy as stuck as I had in my body, well, you're going to experience some rather unpleasant symptoms. And so that's the energy component right there. What the third principle, the harmonizing principle, is talking about is that if you can get in touch with element by element with exactly what those barriers feel like, because they are an energetic component in your body, in other words, a sensation, or very simply a feeling. So if you can get in touch element by element with what that sensation, that energetic component feels like in your body, feel it fully and thoroughly, accurately and honestly, what will happen is that you will discover your innate ability to transmute that life detracting stuck energy that has only been persisting, to transmute it into life enhancing healthy energy, and therefore the experience will clear up, or you could say it disappears. But perhaps a better way of explaining it is that it integrates into your sense of well-being because it's now life-enhancing energy. It's clearly contributing to your aliveness and to your well-being. That's the harmonizing principle. And those three principles really are the basis of my breath alchemy technique. It took me many years to discover that, many years through trial and error and the school of hard knocks. Nope, this don't work, that don't work. And it finally getting, and I had a lot of help along the way, a lot of teachers. And I finally figured it out. And when I say figured it out experientially, I got it. So the practical application of the harmonizing principle is contained in my breath alchemy technique, and it's what I call the 5-step harmonizing method. And so the exact method that I teach for transmuting energy is you learn to breathe in a certain way. And like I said earlier, you can't just tell people these things, you got to show them. And so I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a certain breathing rhythm that we use in the breath alchemy technique. And I'm just going to shut up and breathe for a moment. Okay, there's a demonstration. I just took 5 circular breaths. And what I mean by circular breaths, that's the name I call the breathing we use in breath alchemy. And what it is, as you noticed, first of all, I did it in and out through my mouth. I could have done it in and out through my nose. Either way will work, but I did it through the mouth. Uh, what I mean by circular breathing is that I'm pulling the inhale, but I'm pulling it firmly, yet smoothly and evenly, very much like an elevator taking you from the ground floor up to the first floor. What you expect from that elevator ride is for it to take you up firmly, yet for it to be a very smooth and a very even ride. Anything less than that, if it's herky-jerky, well, you're better off taking the stairs, and that's probably the way you'll go the next time around. There's no pause at all, and without pause at all, without any pause, the inhale just merges into and becomes the exhale. The exhale is like the elevator coming down. I'm not adding anything to it. The elevator coming down is going to be a nice, smooth, and even descent. So there's no control on the exhale. And at the end of the exhale, without pause, I immediately begin the inhale again. And here's 5 more. Well, what circular breathing does is it dramatically increases the energy flow through your body. It puts you in touch with source energy itself, which is most commonly called prana. Although it's also been, the Chinese call it qi, the Japanese call it ki. It's also been called tachyon energy, and there's probably other names for it, but I call it prana. It is the source of the energy of life. Life, without prana, there is no life. It's that vital. We cannot exist for a nanosecond without it. So, yes, we do take it in primarily through the air that we breathe, but we breathe in such a shallow, inefficient manner that we're just barely tapping into that flow, tapping into it only enough to keep the body alive for, well, statistically 70 odd plus years, but never enough to access our innate ability to transmute life detracting stuck energy into life enhancing healthy energy. That's what the circular breathing does. But it doesn't do it just by itself. It does it in combination with harmonizing with the effects of the circular breathing. So, what is the effect of the circular breathing? Well, first of all, what it does is it dramatically increases the energy flow through your body. And so, what I do is I teach you to relax into that and to honor the presence of that increased energy flow by opening up your inner feeling sense so you can be there present with it on a feeling level. And that is in hand. That's the second step, the complete relaxation. The third step just speaks to really enhancing your ability to tune in to feel that. It's called awareness in detail. And so you don't run away from the feeling. Quite to the contrary, you open up your inner feeling sense to let yourself feel your inner body as best you can from head to toe. That will allow you to be totally present with the increased energy flow. It will also allow you to be totally present with the other aspect of the circular breathing, and that is the healing component. Because what it will also do in that increased energy flow is bring up patterns of stuck energy that you have been avoiding, that you have been resisting, that you've been stuck in resistance, leads to persistence with, because it doesn't feel good. Well, the reason it doesn't feel good is because we've been habitually making it wrong, judging it, and trying to keep it suppressed, trying to just bury it as deeply as we can so we don't have to deal with it, so we don't have to feel it. But if you will tune into that and feel it with detailed awareness and do it in a context of acceptance, which is the fourth step. The fourth step is that you find a more useful way of relating to the feeling than making it wrong. Duh. If you continue to make it wrong, it's going to continue to feel yucky. But if you can learn to make peace with the feeling, moment by moment, element by element, what you will find is that you're getting in touch with your innate ability to transmute that energy, and it will quickly transform into life enhancing, useful energy that feels, not only feels good, but it feels great. That's the process known as integration. Well, the fifth step says you don't have to do any of that stuff perfectly. You just do your best because the real and the only absolute requirement is your burning desire. And in this case, it's your burning desire to go for health and wellness and a feeling of well being. In other words, being present in life and feeling great in life. Helen Keller said it best when she said life is either an exciting adventure or it's nothing. So, how's about transforming just going through the motions into an exciting adventure? Well, sounds pretty good to me. And breath alchemy, through the process of integration, through the process of discovering and then mastering your innate ability to transform that life detracting stuck energy into life enhancing healthy energy, is the ticket to creating a life being an exciting adventure, really.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I feel like myself and listeners just got handed the keys to our own body and health. And, I know I want to come get a session with you. And it makes sense, right? Because we have to feel the things that we're repressing. We have to shift our perspective around them. And if we keep ignoring things and pushing them down, like, of course, the universe has that way of like shaking you, right? Like, if you're pushing something away, it's like, hey, I'm going to show you this louder and louder. Um, you said something really interesting in your book that's related to this that I wanted to ask about. You said that we hold our breath in moments of pain, and the first breath that we take in this world is painful. And that kind of blew my mind. And so it makes sense that we're healing with breath. But can you talk a little bit about that, about breath being painful usually?
Well, yeah, it really does go back to birth, and it even is much more basic than that. And nothing in this book is true, but it's exactly how things are. I make the case how we fell from the experience of unity 13,000 years ago in Atlantis, and we became our reactive minds. The distinction is that when we're in unity, we're connected to source through our higher self. The higher self is the heartfelt connection to source, to all that is, and it puts you into the present moment. And it's only in the present moment where your higher self is, your connection to source is available to you. And it's therefore only in the present moment when you get the unlimited reservoir of the goodies that come through that connection to source. And that's inner peace and joyfulness and creativity and inspiration and unconditional, all the good stuff in life, in other words. Well, when we fell and became our reactive mind, the reactive mind, it doesn't know the present moment. It's in a continual state of judgment. It looks out at the reality and it compares the situation, the person that you're dealing with, to what you think that person ideally should be like. And if that person doesn't measure up, we judge that person. And we have a vested interest in I'm right and you're wrong, usually with a lot of emotional charge. Well, that leads to living life conceptually. But where it begins in this lifetime is it really does go back to birth. Uh, a hospital birth is really, if we had any idea what we're doing, we wouldn't do it that way. And a lot of people have learned and are doing it in a much more awake, much more conscious way. There are alternatives to hospital births. I'm not making it wrong, but just saying there's better ways. What happens is that of all the damage that's done at birth is that the cord is cut prematurely. Where you and I, as newborn infants, really we need to be shown that the outside world is a safe place, it's a fun place, and it has infinitely more possibilities than the confines of the womb. Unfortunately, we're shown exactly the opposite, and it all begins with the premature cutting of the cord. So if the cord was kept in place until it stops pulsing, however long that might be, where we learn to transition from the way we breathed in the womb to the way we must breathe outside here in the outside world, then life would show up differently because our breathing would not be suppressed. It would not be stuck. It would not be inhibited. But when the first breath is forced upon us, we're forced to breathe in a do or die situation. And the situation is such that yeah, we have to breathe, but it's met with searing pain and the lungs are filled with amniotic fluid. And so we're choking on that breath. And that's how we learned how to breathe. And
Mhm.
so most people have been subventilating, most everybody subventilating, which is a form of holding your breath ever since. And that's what I meant when I said earlier about people being very shallow breathers. It really does go back to the first breath. And so what that does is it absolutely ensures that you and I will become mind-based entities, living life conceptually, not knowing the present moment because the mind doesn't know the present moment. It sees the present through the eyes of the past, through the eyes of the unresolved issues that go way back to the moment of the first breath and continue with the programming that we received through parents and other authority figures. Not that they aren't doing their best, not that they aren't well minded, but it's a multi generational pattern that gets handed on from generation to generation because they were born in a hospital situation. They had parents who were living life conceptually, and it just goes on and on until finally we learn to break the cycle. uh, see if I can put all the pieces together here right now. So, what I mean when I say that when we're living out of our reactive mind, the mind does not know the present moment. It sees the present through the eyes of the past, through the eyes of the unresolved emotional trauma, like I said, that began at birth and continues through early childhood. Uh, we are learned to really, we are programmed to become good actors and good actresses. We are programmed to learn to become through the motions because the parents and other adult figures in our life, the other authority figures, they've got everything we need. And so we either conform to that or we rebel against it. But either way, we're at the effect of the same thing. And either way, it doesn't really make any difference because you have the effect of your reactive mind and you're going to be living life conceptually. Well, when you don't know the present moment and the reactive mind does not, then there's no pathway to the higher self. There's no pathway to your heartfelt connection to source. And so that's where life becomes just a series of going through the motions. Unfortunately, that is pretty much the human drama. Now, it might sound like I've overstated that, and I have just a little bit, because that's not to say that in that asleep, like where I was when I started, and still am to some degree. uh, yeah, nobody's perfect. Well, I just said earlier that we are perfect. Whoa, what's going on here? Okay, so uh, where am I going with this? Well, uh, yeah, uh, in the unawake state, in the unaware state, uh, it doesn't mean that you never are present. Uh, it's not true. There are times when you and I are very much present, very much in the present moment. And that's when, time just slows down and life becomes an exciting adventure. But the problem is, it doesn't last for most people for very long. And so we quickly revert to living life conceptually out of our minds. A lot more I can say about that. And if you want me to, I will.
Yeah, I mean, all of these things are just have been on the forefront of my mind so much. I told you I just gave birth 5 months ago. And so, you know, wanting to raise a conscious child and, just thinking about programming and all of that. Like I wanted to have one of the dolphin births. My husband thought I was crazy that Drunvalo talks about. It's really hard to find those anywhere, by the way. Um but no, I really appreciate everything you say. And when you were talking about perfection before, you were talking about we have all these barriers to perfection. And I have a feeling you were referencing our thoughts and emotions, right? How they can stop you from kind of getting what you want. So I would love it if you would talk a little bit about those. And maybe that's the direction you were going to go anyway. But I think that people's thoughts and emotions kind of take control of their life a lot. And yeah, I would just love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Well, let's come back to the present moment and I'll just expand on the thought or the
Sure.
idea that the reactive mind is in a continual state of judgment. And I don't think I don't need to convince anybody that that's true. Just take a look at your own reactive mind and see if that is not. I mean, people listening to this right now are judging everything I say. Come on, that's just the way we are. Well, every time you and I judge something, we're comparing it, as I said earlier, to an imaginary standard, the ideal version that your mind has of how that person or how that situation should be. And so, if there's something about you that I don't like because you don't measure up to that standard, I'm going to judge you. In other words, I'm going to make you wrong. And then usually there's a lot of I'm right and you're wrong that's associated with that. A lot of emotional charge. Yeah, it's me and I'm right and yeah, you know the script. We've all done it. And so what that is that there are two things going on here at the same time. It's really two different versions of the same thing. The first is there's the conceptual component. There's the thought. And the thought is a make wrong thought. It's judgment. I'm right and you're wrong. And every time you and I have a thought, be it a pleasant thought, a non-pleasant thought, or whatever type of a thought, because the body is energy, there is an instantly generated feeling component to it, a sensation, or very simply, as I just like to call it, a feeling. And so there's the thought and there's the feeling. The thought and the feeling are two different versions of the same thing. It's not that one causes the other, it's that they're the same thing perceived through two different internal senses. And so, if you begin to notice your reactive mind, what it will do every time you have that judgment is it will do everything you can to take you into the narrative, into the story, into the details about why I am right and why you are wrong. And it will also do everything it can to take you away from the instantly generated pattern of energy because the feeling doesn't feel good. But like I said earlier, it doesn't feel good because it can't, because the judgment behind it, with the emotional charge associated with it, is an unpleasant thought. And unpleasant thoughts only bring forth unpleasant feelings. So there's the deal right there. There's your reactive mind at work. It'll do everything it can to take you over. And in the unaware state, it succeeds virtually 100% of the time. And that's probably an understatement. It probably succeeds 100% of the time. And so that's what I'm saying. What I mean when I say that we just live life conceptually, just going through the motions. There's no real presence. There's no real aliveness. There's certainly no present moment there. In order to break that spell, what I suggest, and I detail this in both of my books, and that is just learn to become an impartial observer of your mind. Just learn to watch your mind, learn to watch your thoughts impartially. But there's the key, it must be impartial. The moment you judge it, now the back door is open again and your mind is going to take you over. So it must be an impartial observer. And you just learn to watch the repetitive nonsense of all of it. It's like they're endless loop recordings that repeat themselves over and over, and the more you watch it, the more you become familiar with the script. Uh, uh, and then to enhance that, you get in touch with the corresponding pattern of energy, the feeling. And just as in breath alchemy, you find a more useful way of relating to the feeling than making it wrong. In other words, you find a way to allow it to be exactly the way it is, to make peace with it rather than to make war with it, rather than to resist it. And in so doing, you will discover that you are not your mind. You're not your thoughts. You're none of that stuff. You're something much greater. Because look, here I am. I'm watching my mind. How could I be my mind? And I'm now watching how I used to just in the unaware state, just habitually buy into that narrative and allow my mind to take me away. Now, just by watching it, I'm not empowering it. In fact, I'm disempowering it. And it just quickly begins to lose its grip on me. That is greatly enhanced by being present moment by moment with the corresponding feeling and discovering your innate ability to transmute that feeling into healthy life enhancing energy. And that's, again, really the basis of breath alchemy. To breath alchemy, we just add the power of the circular breathing. Um, so I hope what I've said there, I don't remember the question, but that's the answer. I get
Yeah.
carried away. And,
No, I love it. I feel like I could listen to you talk all day and you totally nailed it. You totally answered the question.
oh, whatever the question was, I'm glad.
It was something about thoughts and emotions and you hit it right on the head. Um yeah, one of the other things you really talked about because we're talking about healing, one of the other things you talked about in the book that really had a profound effect on me was healing our relationship with our parents.
Yeah.
And I did your little exercise in the book and I realized that I could forgive my dad for choosing to die. And I started bawling when I read the book. I don't know if I even shared that with you, but he had the choice of getting a feeding tube, which he had had before and hated, or just going. And I didn't realize how angry I was at him for not meeting his grandson because of that. And anyway, it had such a profound effect on me. I want to thank you, but I also wanted you to share a little bit about that with listeners because I think it'll have a profound effect on everyone.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I've talked a little bit about the higher self earlier in this conversation and quite a bit about the reactive mind. The fact is that you and I exist in threeness. Actually, everything exists in threeness. But I won't go there. I'll just say that you and I exist in threeness right now by saying that we have a higher self, we have a middle self, and we have a lower self. Now, our higher self is our connection to source. It's our connection to the present moment, to all that is, where the unlimited reservoir of creativity and joyfulness and inner peace and all the good stuff, it flows through us. Uh, our reactive mind, when we're living a mind-based reality, as most everyone on this planet is, that's the middle self. The lower self is a child of about 2 to 4, some say about 2 to 6 years old, somewhere's in that range of about 2 to 4, 2 to 6 years old. The thing is, Chris, when you're living from your reactive mind in your middle self and you want to learn to connect with your higher self, you can't go straight up. First of all, you have to go down. And in order to go down, you have to reconnect with our childlike nature and and heal the inner child. When I say reconnect with our childlike nature, just imagine, you know, just just remember as best you can. You're 3, maybe 4, maybe even 5 years old, and I like to use the example of looking up at the night sky. A beautiful starlit night, and you're just looking up at the stars. Maybe you know the names of the constellation, maybe you don't. It don't matter. You're just right there, present, just having a wonderful time, just in absolute awe and wonder of all of it. Such is life when you're 3, 4, or 5 years of
Mhm.
age. Uh, and so, because the child is still in the present moment, still you don't have the name for it, but still in total connection with all that is. And so you're just living life that way. That's why life is exciting. That's why life is awesome. We haven't had it fully conditioned out of us yet. But don't worry, it will be. And that's the conditioning that we all have gone through, and we've become our reactive minds. We at a certain point gave up our natural divinity in the name of following instructions in order to get along with authority figures in our life, not bad people, but people who were doing the best they could, who were at the effect of their reactive minds because of their programming from their parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's multi-generational. Okay, so in order to go up, you must first go down and heal the inner child, the unresolved emotional trauma that to some degree you and I and everybody experienced in our childhood. And at a certain point, gave up our natural divinity in the name of following instructions. And we became good little actors and good little actresses and just going through the motions ever since. So uh, and well, actually, I pretty well detailed the process of resolving the inner child, the conflict of the inner child, the 5-step harmonizing method, breath alchemy, and just getting in touch with the content of your mind as an impartial observer and just feeling the corresponding patterns of energy. Learning how to interact consciously into is the process of waking up. That is the process of healing the inner child. Yeah, there's more to it than that, but that really is the essence, and that'll certainly get you started. Well, the key to rediscovering our childlike innocence really is the key to putting you into the present moment. Just like I was saying, if you can imagine you're 3 or 4 years old and you're looking up at you're present, you're in the moment. The moment is all there is. It's exciting, it's awesome, it's wonderful. Such is the joyfulness of being that age. Well, it's still within you. And you and I can learn to rediscover that and to recreate that so we can rediscover presence. Then the doorway to the higher self is open, then and only then. And so the real key to expand on the business of healing the inner child, um, there's more than what I've given you so far. When I say the real key, uh, we need to realize that the most fundamental relationship that you and I could ever have is our relationship with our parents. And to some degree, at least to some degree, there is still unresolved emotional issues that need to be resolved in order to rediscover our childlike innocence. And that's the whole process of healing the inner child. There's a lot more to that. Um, I went into great detail in Nothing in this book is true on what did I call that? The chapter was in order to ascend, we must first descend. And I was listening to it just the other day, and I was struck really. you say you were struck by it. Well, I got to admit, I was too. I hadn't listened to it or read it for some time, and I was just struck by it. It just grabbed me. Um, and um, what can I say? If you read that chapter or listen to it, you will really begin to get the keys to what healing the inner child and healing our relationship with our parents is all about. So, in a nutshell, that's basically it right there.
Thank you for walking us through that. I love that you were struck by it too. Does any part of you, this just side note, feel like you channeled some of your books and then you go back and you're like, wow, that was really profound. Do you ever have that experience?
uh, yeah. What did you say? Do I channel any of that stuff?
No, I mean, does it ever feel like it to you or no?
Uh, well, that's very interesting. I've that's kind of a fun thought to hang out with. Normally, I would say I don't give much credence to channeling. If it's channeled, I question it because, well, it's got to come through the channeler, and how much of a clear channel is the channeler? To me, that's one of the real keys right there. Yet, with that said, uh, you could say you could say that when you really are in your heartfelt connection to source through your higher self, that the inspiration and the creativity coming through you from source energy is channeling. I don't know. I suppose you could give it that name. I don't really, but hey, what the heck? You could certainly call it that. And the other thing I will say is that uh, uh, one of the chief pieces of information that I've ever discovered in my life is the law of one, and that is channeled information. And that came from 2.6 billion years ago from our good friends on Venus, when Venus ascended into the fourth dimension and became a collective entity known as Ra. And Ra being a collective entity that brought forth all of this amazing information known as the law of one. I first discovered it in 1992 when I took Drunvalo's workshop, the Flower of Life workshop, and was given access to the two ancient mystery schools, the two 12-year mystery schools going on back in the day in Egypt. The second of the two 12-year schools was led by Akhenaten, who is a Christ consciousness being, a fourth dimensional being, and that's a whole story by itself, but I'll just put that out right now. And primarily because of the name of his 12-year mystery school was the law of one, guess what he was bringing forth? And
Hmm.
so initially, the law of one was presented on planet Earth through Akhenaten and presented through his 12-year mystery school. But like they say in the law of one, it was accepted by very few. Akhenaten was a rather amazing being, to say the least. But the problem is that he just brought forth this information and said everything has got to change, like it or not. And most people did not like it. They resisted him every step of the way and reverted back to their old ways just as soon as they could. But for one brief shining moment, for about 17 and a half years, 12 of those years in his Law of One Mystery School, he was allowed to bring forth that information. And the real deal is contained in that Law of One Mystery School. So I was first made aware of that back in 1992, and only on a really relatively superficial level, because Drunvalo just brought forth the sacred geometry associated with that. Not that it's not important, it's tremendously important, because what it does is it shows the holographic universe and the unity of life, and it therefore convinces the reactive mind, which looks out at the reality and sees separation and division, that there really is only one spirit moving through all of life, and that when the mind really sees that, then there's a relaxation that occurs and it begins to cooperate with your intuitive self, and the doorway to the higher self begins to open up. So it is important. It's very important. But I just was struck by the title of the mystery school, The Law of One. And I just, the inquisitiveness in me said, well, what's that all about? So I started looking around. And I figured, well, the best place to look is in the local bookstore. And that's where I went. And lo and behold, I found a book that was called, I think it was called the Raw Material, the Raw being a humble messenger of the law of one, something like that. And I go, bingo, there it is. So I picked that book up and I ran with it, and I discovered it was just the first of 4 or 5 in a series of books. And it became an exciting new adventure that I continue to learn and grow from to this very day, because there's just no end to the wisdom and the knowledge and the understanding on a very deep level that's contained there. And this is channeled information. It was brought through initially, as I said, through Akhenaten back in Egypt, way back in the day. But in more modern times, in the early 1980s, it was channeled through a couple. And um, but it is the real thing, you know. So I don't you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I don't throw that out with all channeling. That is good stuff. The Law of One. You don't even have to buy the books anymore. Just go to lawofone.org and the whole thing is right there. So that's really where a lot of my stuff comes from. That's where it's sourced.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't Maybe I read that in Flower of Life about the second mystery school being called that, but it didn't register. And I didn't even know about Ra and the Law of One until I read your book, Catching the Ascension Wave, which
Mhm.
just came out last year. And I was like, what is this about? And then on my Instagram, it started showing up, right? And I was like, huh, that's interesting. Like I had followed it already and I didn't even know it, but once I was conscious of it, it started appearing. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Um, the other channeler I really like is Bashar. I know Drunvalo studied with him a little bit. He's pretty amazing. Okay, I want to ask you. We talked about the three universal principles, and there's kind of a fourth one, right? The law of cause and effect. So I would love for you to just talk about that a little bit, just to kind of switch gears
There's
to go
not
back.
kind of a fourth one. There really is a fourth one,
Okay.
and it is called the law of cause and effect.
Okay.
Yeah. And what it says is that you always get what you want. There's no exceptions. Well, we must understand that wanting is defined as both conscious mind and subconscious mind. Because, uh, if you're hearing this for the first time, and I just said, you always get what you want, there's no exceptions, and you're sitting there going that, hey, wait a minute. I've got a job that I absolutely hate for a boss that I absolutely detest. Now, why would I want that? And why would I create that? I certainly don't want that in my life. Well, wanting is defined as both conscious and subconscious mind. The mind is like the iceberg. The part that you see is only 10% of the iceberg. The remaining 90% is below the surface. It's in the subconscious mind where we have all these belief systems that uh, uh, become the unwitting filter through which we experience life. You and I don't see life as it is directly. We see it through what I like to call a context, through a filter, through a lens, if you will. Uh, and uh, and so, in the unaware state, we don't know that. In fact, it's even worse. We don't know, and we don't know that we don't know that. We're looking at life through this filter, through this on-question, on-examined assumptions based on all these subconscious belief systems in the subconscious mind, all of which are based on the unresolved emotional and, in many cases, unresolved physical trauma that we experienced as a child. And so that's what I mean when I say that the mind doesn't know the present moment. It sees the present through the eyes of the past, through the eyes of the unresolved trauma that is still unerringly creating our reality moment by moment by moment. And so there is a part of you deep in your subconscious mind that no matter what it is, no matter how pleasant, unpleasant the work situation might be or the boss might be, there's a part of you that absolutely believes that it needs to be that way. And until you get beneath the surface and address the root cause of that problem, you're only going to continue to recreate it because you're confronting the resistance principle, the principle that says whatever you resist will continue to persist. Now, in both of my books, I give detailed explanations as to how to go in and resolve all of that, and to get back into the present moment. Um, I can go through it very quickly right here. It's really what I like to call a three-step process. And the first step is to just the way I like to put that is that there's only one way to effectively use the cause of the law of cause and effect, and that is to use it backwards. And that meaning you take full responsibility for everything going on in your life. It is a function of your creation. And when you learn to get to the other side of that, what that same law of cause and effect says, you can have anything you want in your life. And in fact, you get it. And when you learn to use it consciously, in other words, learn to root out and resolve the unquestioned, unexamined belief systems that are creating less than what you want, now you're opening up the space to create exactly what you do want. And so life begins to show up. So the first step is to take responsibility. And the way I like to put that is you just use the law of cause and effect backwards, and you just whatever is going on in your life that is less than perfect, you just say, "Oh, look at what I created." Well, the second step is that there is no judging. Really, there is no such thing as right or wrong in the larger scheme of things, because every right and wrong is a function of our polarized mind, and our polarized mind is a function of living in an unaware state in a very dense aspect of the reality where we're vibrating at a very slow rate because we're continually at the effect of these unresolved emotional patterns. So uh, you just accept it, take responsibility for it without judgment. And that's what I mean when I say you have to find a more useful way of relating to the situation than making it wrong. That opens the doorway to the third step. And the third step is that you just ask yourself a very useful question, and that is, how would I like to feel? Well, we all want to feel good, so that's pretty obvious. Well, the question is, how do you get from feeling yucky, being at the effect of these unresolved patterns, to feeling good again? And that is, you learn to discover your innate ability to transmute that life detracting stuck energy into life enhancing energy that is now moving. Life detracting stuck energy is vibrating at a very slow rate. The energy of fear, the energy of shame, of guilt, the energy of sadness, the energy of anxiety is all vibrating at a very dense rate. The energy of I'll get even with you, of revenge, very densely vibrating energy. We're stuck when we're there. When the energy is allowed to transmute and become life enhancing energy, now it's vibrating at a much higher vibratory rate, and the higher vibratory rating the higher vibrating energy is the energy of the higher worlds of the fourth dimension. It's the energy of the present moment. It's the energy of your heartfelt connection to source through your higher self, the energy of unconditional love, of joyfulness, of creativity, of inspiration, of inner peace, and all the goodies in life. So it just all comes back to discovering and mastering your innate ability to transmute energy, because that's what we are. And to learning to use the law of cause and effect consciously, because another thing I say in my book, and nothing in this book is true, is that just imagine for a moment, if you and I were given one wish, and that we could have, God comes on a cloud and says, look, Chris, you can have one wish. It could be anything you want. Take as much time as you need, consult with as many experts as you want, and let me know when you're ready, and I will give it to you. Okay, you've taken all the time you need. You've consulted with all the experts. You've come to the conclusion after who knows how much consultation and just, contemplation and all of that. Without exception, without question, what you would choose is the law of cause and effect. Because what it says is you can have anything you want, and in fact, you get it. And when you learn how to use it consciously, that's what Helen Keller meant when she said, life is either an exciting adventure or it's nothing. Life shows up. Bingo.
Yeah, I mean it's how we manifest everything, right? Into our lives. And even the things that, like you said, even the things that we don't want in our lives, we are creating, whether consciously or not.
Yeah, yeah.
What a
We're
great way to wrap up.
we're creating all of it, every single bit of it.
Yeah. And
And
I
the
think that
whole game
that's,
of life is learning how to do it consciously. That's what it's all about.
you
It's
know,
such an
really quick. I know we only have like 2 minutes. So I post a lot of content about the same thing, and there's so much resistance because people aren't ready to hear that, right? They say, well, what about these injustices I see? What about these prejudices I see? What about these horrible racism and sexism and wars and all that? Like, what is your response to that?
well, everything that's going out there is just an outer reflection of what's going on inside of you. And so what we live in, it is a very polarized world that's become more polarized than ever. But it's the very necessary condition for wakening up. Because what's going on here is that there's a much higher vibratory energy that's coming into in preparation for taking us through ascension into the fourth dimension. And that's the higher vibratory energy of unconditional love and joyfulness and creativity and all that good stuff. And what it's doing is stirring up the pot. Now, the thing is that uh, the darkness out there, which is just an outer reflection of the darkness going on within us, it's been allowed to exist in the unaware state uh, in the shadows, where we're not conscious mind aware of it. But now everything is accelerated to such an extent that it's being forced out of the shadows and into the light of the day. And there is a very simple yet very powerful universal principle that says darkness cannot survive in the presence of light. You can illustrate this by going into a totally darkened room where you can't see a thing. Yet the moment you flip on the light switch, what happens to the darkness? It disappears. It gets transmuted into the light. The darkness gets transmuted into light. And so that's what's going on out there, but it's all a function of what, first of all, is going on within here. There's a great awakening that's going on this planet right now. It may not always look that way because people are going through this transition, but people uh, in large numbers are discovering their innate ability to transmute energy and to discover presence, and in so doing, begin to have a direct impact on enormously raising the quality of the vibratory rate out there, and so that we're coming to a point where it's no longer necessary. Even though it doesn't look that way right now, we're still in transition. There's really three states of energy that you and I individually and collectively must go through in order to create integration into the higher vibratory rate. The first is suppression, and that's where everything is allowed to exist either inside of us or out there in the darkness. And so it's just allowed to do its thing behind the curtain. You're not conscious mind aware of it. As you begin to become conscious mind aware of it, or very simply, you begin to get triggered and become aware of enough of the triggering effect to stay present rather than to let your interactive mind, your reactive mind just take you over, then you begin to realize that that's the second state. You're in a second state called activation. And if you can learn to find a more useful way of relating to the activation than make its energetic component wrong, you will discover your innate ability to transmute that energy and therefore to create the third component, which is integration. And so that's when the energy gets transmuted and it's begins within here. You transmute the energy into here, into life enhancing energy. And then the rippling effect is such that the critical mass is being created and it's creating a world that's worth living in. I make the case, and this is a bold statement, describe exactly what ascension is all about and how we are very much in the process of going through ascension into the higher worlds, like it or not, or know it or not, and how everybody is going to be taken care of. And that uh, in the process of going through this, this is the transition we're going through right now. But I submit also that before the actual transmutation into the higher worlds takes place, we're going to be creating a higher world right here because you got to clean up the mess you made out there, both in here and out there, before you can transmute into the higher worlds. You don't here again, you just can't plaster it over, pretending it's not there and medicate the unresolved feelings inside of you over. You have to learn how to transmute them so that the shift is real. The transmutation is real. The same thing out there. Uh, when we learn that everything out there is outward reflection of what's going on in here, we're creating that critical mass that allows Mother Earth to become lit from within, to create the critical mass from within, to allow the shift to begin to take place. And in the interim, the mess that we've made out there is going to begin to clear itself up. And I submit that we're going to be experiencing life in a way that we probably never even dreamed possible. And I think that's going to be coming a whole lot sooner than most people might think. Stay tuned. I'm talking about within the next year or 2 or 3.
Oh, wow.
Sounds
That's
like I'm just blowing smoke right now to some
no,
people,
I
Patty. You
want you to
just
be
wait.
right. All right, he said it here first. Now that's the kind of world I want for my kid for sure. Um, I want to be respectful of your time. We're a few minutes after. How are you doing for time? Do we need to wrap up?
I'm fine.
You are?
I'm
Okay, then
just
okay.
fine.
Because I feel like I could talk to you forever. Okay, I want to ask you then. So all over social media, I know you don't have an Instagram and Facebook, but all over social media, there's these the hashtag 5D is buzzing, right? We're moving into 5D, all this stuff. Drunvalo talks more about, and you talk more about how we're moving into the fourth dimension, and we're going to have that boost in chromosomes. So, how do you juggle those two ideas? Are they the same thing, saying it different ways, or what do you think about that?
What do I think about what?
Is
I didn't get the question.
Sorry, let me explain. So the way that you and Drunvalo talk about it, we're moving from the third dimension into the fourth, right? And the third was only meant to be a stepping stone, and it's disharmonic, it's chaotic, right? And the fourth is more harmonic. All over social media, everyone is talking about moving into the 5D.
Oh, into the
So
5th dimension, yeah.
yeah, and which would also be chaotic and disharmonic, right? So why are those two
Did
ideas
you say
opposing?
5D or 5G?
5D, fifth dimension.
Yeah, 5th dimension. Well, what I'll say to that is that to be specific, and nothing in this book is true, I'm very specific about
Yeah.
just exactly what the dimensional worlds are, how they're separated by wavelength, and as you go up in the dimensional worlds, the vibration becomes much higher, the frequency becomes much shorter, and it's an extreme elevation in consciousness. The law of one says that the fourth dimension is 100 times more harmonious than even your very best moments here on third dimensional Earth. To be exact and specific, we're going into either the 10th, 11th, or 12th overtone of the fourth dimension. Here again, it's a much shorter wavelength. It's a much higher vibratory rate. It's a much more harmonious, 100 times more harmonious than even your best moments right here on planet Earth. Those who are talking about 5D, the law of one makes it very clear. You cannot get to the 5th dimension until you've gone through the 4th dimension. So frankly, I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
I don't
Excuse my
either.
French. And maybe it's just a gimmick. Maybe they know what they're talking about. I don't know, and I don't really want to go there. But what I will say, in order to make it very simple, what we're talking about in so many ways when we're talking about moving into the higher vibratory worlds is literally the process of moving out of your reactive mind and back into the heartfelt presence of your connection to source through your higher self, where the present moment, which is the only moment that creativity and inspiration and the higher vibratory rates of all of those goodies in life can show up. That's the higher vibratory rate of the higher dimensions. And we first of all have to create it here before we can even hope to learn how to transmute our bodies and disappear, as we learn how to create a light body in an instant, disappear and reappear into the higher worlds. So you can only cover that superficially in just a soundbite. But believe me, I do go into great detail in both of my books the 25th anniversary edition of Nothing in This Book is True, and also Catching the Ascension Wave. And use the law of one, use what I learned out of Drunvalo's Flower of Life workshop to back me up, use what I learned out of Akhenaten's Law of One mystery school to back me up. So it's not just me saying it. But I do know something about raising our vibratory rate through transmuting energy. That comes through direct experience.
Thanks
So I
for
hope that
thanks.
answers the
No,
question.
it does, and I'm with you. I'm like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about either. And
Makes
if
two of
you're,
us.
yeah, and if you're listening, seriously, pick up Bob's books. They're so good. They're so good, and he really does go into so much more detail. And he talks about ancient Egypt, and he talks about the ETs, which we didn't even like get to today. Which, by the way, what do you think about the fact that, I don't know if you listened to Joe Rogan. I sent you a Joe Rogan episode. I don't know if you listened to it, but Terrence Howard was on there talking about the flower of life. Joe Rogan's talking about Zachariah Sitchin and the Anunnaki. Like, it's becoming these things that we've been talking about for decades are becoming into the mainstream. Do you feel like that's part of this awakening?
Oh, no question about it.
Yeah.
20, I've been researching this stuff ever since 1990. And in 1990, if I were to try to talk about any of this stuff right then, I would have been laughed and shown the door. But
Yeah.
now people can hear it. Oh, the shift has been enormous. It's been tremendous. It's like I say, it's not really yet apparent because we're going through what I like to call the dark night of the soul. And I'm not the only one who calls it that. I think you talked about it too in your book. So different people have talked about this dark night of the soul. And really what it is this displacement process that is a direct function of this higher vibratory energy that's coming in through what's called through the secret space program as the what do they call it? Cosmic dust cloud. I forget it. I shouldn't have said that because I can't remember what they're calling it.
Well, I liked that. That was cool.
Yeah, the secret space program is calling it a great cosmic dust cloud. They've been out there, and and what it's doing is it's forcing everybody to wake up. Either that or be consumed by your unresolved emotional traumas. And so push is coming to shove. And what that does is, whether you like it or not, it tends to accelerate the healing process. But if you don't know what's the healing process, then you're going to get stuck in the anxiety and the fear and the resentment and all of that stuff. You're going to get stuck in your reactive mind's version of it rather than your innate ability to transmute the energetic component into life enhancing energy. But as we wake up, we learn to make that distinction and learn how to heal it. So it's not readily apparent, but it is happening at a very rapid rate. Goodness sakes, the difference, like I was suggesting, in the past 35 years is dramatic, and it just continues to grow.
Do you think that there's going to be two camps of people? Those who identify with their reactive mind and get stuck in the fear and the drama and the panic cycle, and those who really have true healing and can help create this new earth? Or does everyone eventually come through the dark night of the soul and we're all better off on the other side?
Well, there's the rippling effect, and there's the uh, maybe you've heard of the 100th monkey theory,
Yeah.
and um, what that is really, to cut to the quick on it, what it speaks to is the rippling effect. That once a new idea has reached a certain level of once enough people have gotten it, it doesn't need to be anywhere near a majority, but you get enough people who have latched on to that new way of being, and then bingo, the rippling effect begins to take effect, and you create the critical mass. And so uh, what it does is creates a pathway for people to wake up in accelerated ways that they're not even at first conscious mind aware of. And then they discover it in themselves, and then they're ready to go. So each person in its own time, but it's all being accelerated dramatically. And uh, the 100th monkey thing is real. But Chris, there's just so much more to this that, we need to go 3, 4 more hours to cover all of it. And I just
Yeah.
I don't think we have the time to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate you staying over. It's always cool to get your thoughts. I just appreciate your time so much. Thank you. I'm sure listeners want to know where they can find you, how they can work with you, what your website is, where they can get your books. So if you want to share that, please share.
Yeah, well, if you want to know more about me, just go to my website, bobfrissell.com. Um, Frissell to spell it, bobfrissell.com. But really, what I would suggest when you get there is that you check out the links to my books. I do offer free 30-minute consultation for anybody who wants to talk to me, but the prerequisite is you need to have read at least one of those two books so we can speak, because we can't really talk. We can't really get up to speed unless you have that much of a background in you. But if you do, and if what you've read resonates with you, and I do feel it would, I do feel it will, or you wouldn't be listening to this in the first place. If it does resonate, and if you do feel so inclined, then I'd love to talk to you. And from there, we can get a grip and get an understanding of just where to go and what the next best step for you might be. And if working with me further might be a good fit for you. If it's not the right fit, well, then let's look at something else. But if it is the right fit, let's dig a little bit deeper and see what we can do together. So that's really what I suggest. Go to my website, check out my books, and then if you want more, just check out the opportunity to talk to me for 30 minutes.
That's so generous of you. And those that link will be in the show notes as well. So if you're listening to this in the car or something, you can always come back. Bob, thank you so much again for your time. It was such a pleasure. And if you are listening, please send this to someone, like, comment, share, subscribe. Let's all help raise the consciousness of humanity and the planet. Have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone.